this topic is late. This topic is much later than I would have liked, but I have completely been overwhelmed with NFL predictions. It was something I needed to focus on, let's be honest. In the scheme of things, the NFL is what really helps me make money and what people want to hear from me. So I really couldn't find time to prioritize a small F1 topic that's not going to get a lot of views and not going to get a lot of interest on the podcast. But please know that for the rest of the year, from here on out, I'm going to be recording a podcast every single Monday, and that's going to make F1 race reviews happen way, way quicker. So take comfort in that. I love F1, man. I'm passionate about it. I follow it, and I talk about it because I'm passionate and enjoying following F1. It's one of my favorite sports. It's really like football and then F1. I love F1. And so I want to talk today about the Italian Grand Prix. What a crazy race. It was such a blast to watch what happened on Sunday. I have never said this before. One of my favorite things about Formula One is hearing the words, "It's lights out and away we go." It's in that British accent that I certainly cannot do. Nothing fires me up quite like hearing "lights out and away we go." That and the music of F1. The music of F1. I'll talk about that at the end of this topic, man. Oh my gosh. We'll talk about the music. It's great. But what was so cool about the Italian Grand Prix at Monza is that we got that moment, not once, but twice we heard the words, "It's lights out and away we go." And I just deep in my childlike heart, I just get so filled with joy when I hear that. And, we got that red flag, and that stopped the race for a little while. We had to do a whole restart. So getting to hear that twice for me was one of the highlights of that race, even though we'll talk about all the storylines that were crazy and fun. I wanted to share that moment was so cool. Now, of course, the reason why the race was red flagged was because Charles Leclerc ran into a tire barrier, and that had to be repaired. So the race was stopped for safety reasons so that they could repair the tire barrier. So it was there if anybody else went into the runoff at that point. And before we get into the craziness with Lewis Hamilton and what happened with the restart and all the other things going on for him, we need to talk about Ferrari because, oh my gosh, what an absolutely terrible season that Ferrari is having. At the Italian Grand Prix, their home race, literally, Sebastian Vettel's brakes failed, which is so embarrassing for an F1 team, and Charles Leclerc lost the back end and crashed. They had 2 DNFs in their home circuit. It's just wild to me. They're lucky no fans were at Monza this past weekend to see what an embarrassing performance Ferrari had. And it was really wild. As I was watching, Carlos Sainz coming down the backstretch right behind Pierre Gasly. As I'm watching Carlos Sainz get second place on Sunday, in his McLaren, by the way, I couldn't help but feel bad for Carlos Sainz because by leaving McLaren and going to Ferrari, he's absolutely downgrading next year. It's really bizarre, and it's really sad. I mean, I felt like, oh, dude, Carlos, you're going to a bad team, man. Hate to break it to you. You poor soul. Ferrari has been awful. And even weirder, they refused to fire Mattia Binotto. They've talked about, Ferrari, the owner, I guess. Somebody gave a quote, one of the executives at Ferrari saying, "We're going to keep Mattia Binotto. We want to have continuity. We're tired of people getting fired so quickly." And I get the intention there, right? You don't want to be so quick to pull the trigger and fire people. But Mattia Binotto has been awful, man. The organization has been really, really terrible for Ferrari. I don't know how you keep the guy, given what's going on. And Ferrari, they've just been miserable and abysmal all year in Formula One. Now, we got to talk about Lewis Hamilton. Kevin Magnussen is where it starts. He had an engine problem. Kevin Magnussen pulled off to the side of the track, kind of right in front of pit lane. Pretty peacefully, I might add. I mean, he just kind of pulls off to the side, apparently having engine problem. He retires for the race, and he walks off, literally. And so, to get the car back into the garage, the race marshals decided that they were going to simply roll the car back into pit lane because they were so close. And as a result of that decision, pit lane was closed. And there was also a safety car. And it's helpful to get a pit stop during a safety car because it can save you a lot of time. So anytime you see a safety car, racers in F1 go, "Oh, we got to get a pit stop and, try to save a little bit of time here." And unfortunately, though, pit lane was closed because they were trying to get a car in. And having cars around, marshals walking around is a dangerous act. And Lewis Hamilton, not knowing what was going on, went in business as usual and got a pit stop. Just what he would normally do during a yellow flag, during a safety car. And there were two really important red lights. Lewis Hamilton going around the corner right before going into the pit lane. There were two lights he drove right by that were red. And if you know what you're looking for, pretty clearly that means the pit lane is closed. But having the pit lane be closed is very, very rare. And I totally understand how Lewis Hamilton made this mistake. He didn't see the lights, partly because he's cornering and focused on the corner, probably feeling a bunch of G-forces. And again, the pit lane is literally never closed. I mean, I'm sure that dealing with this is a situation Lewis Hamilton has literally never dealt with in his entire Formula One career. And so the one thing about all this that's hard to excuse, though, is that the race engineer for Mercedes literally would have gotten a notification on his screen telling him that pit lane was closed. I have to wonder why that guy didn't speak up and say, hey, by the way, Lewis, don't go into pit lane. It's literally closed. You can't do it. I don't know why that didn't happen. But either way, it seemed like a genuine, honest mistake from Lewis Hamilton. However, he had to get punished. And here's why. The only people who came in and got a pit stop were Lewis Hamilton and Antonio Giovinazzi. Because everybody else, the McLarens behind Lewis Hamilton, they knew, hey, we don't go into pit lane. It's closed. Everyone else knew not to go in. And while, again, I think Lewis Hamilton, it was an honest mistake. The minute Lewis Hamilton got new tires, the damage was done. That's an unfair advantage. You can't have that. Basically, he got a free pit stop when nobody else was allowed to get one. You have to punish that kind of action. And yeah, well, it's all a technicality and it's all an accident and it's an unfortunate thing to happen. You can't allow anybody, let alone Lewis Hamilton, to get an unfair competitive advantage in a race. So Lewis Hamilton had to take a 10-second stop and go penalty. The really long-term result of that was he lost about 30 seconds of time during the race. And again, that's the right punishment here. The penalty took Lewis Hamilton from first place, put him all the way back in 17th place, last place in that race. And as a result, Pierre Gasly got the win. Carlos Sainz took second, and Lance Stroll took third. And I want to break it down here. There's a lot of stuff going on here. But number one, all this drama, the red flag, the penalty, the storylines. My girlfriend was sitting next to me. And my girlfriend doesn't care about sports. I kind of like that about her, that there's no pressure for me to tell my girlfriend about sports because she doesn't know. And when I'm with her, it's my break from sports. And yet this girl, Liz, my girlfriend, who couldn't care less about sports, was sitting on the couch watching her just enjoy Formula One. I've never seen her light up the way she did. She was into it. She was yelling at the TV. It was a good race, and you know it's a good race because my girlfriend, who's not a sports fan, was engaged in an F1 race. She literally said it was like an action movie. And it was so funny. She loves the Racing Point yellow or the pink Mercedes. She called it the Pepto-Bismol pink car, and she literally called it, she called Sergio Perez. She called Sergio Perez's car the Pepto Perez car. I was like, it's just funny and a good time. And I wanted to share that because I just enjoyed, it was just a fun race because of the weird craziness going on. And I think it's sad for me, though, that it takes a bunch of craziness and having Lewis Hamilton get penalized really badly in order for an F1 race to be this fun. I mean, this is the best race of the year. The two best races of the year that I can remember are the race where Lewis Hamilton's tires popped at the end and then where Lewis Hamilton gets penalized and can't win. And I don't like that that's the reality of Formula One, but it is actually, the reality is those were the best races of the year. They were so interesting and fun. Now, Max Verstappen's Red Bull had an engine problem, so he did not finish as well. And it's kind of crazy. It's the first time in literally 146 races that Red Bull, Mercedes, or Ferrari did not win the race. The last non-Red Bull, Mercedes, or Ferrari car to win a race was Jenson Button driving a McLaren in Australia in the year 2013. It's been 7 years since a team other than Red Bull, Ferrari, or Mercedes won an F1 race. That's crazy to me. Now, the last lap was incredible. Pierre Gasly was in P1 with Carlos Sainz right behind him in P2. And for me, the obvious best story of the day was Pierre Gasly winning an F1 race, driving an AlphaTauri. There was so much vindication in that moment. When he won, and he's just sitting on the podium looking over Monza's track, my heart leapt. I was so happy for Pierre Gasly. Because if you don't understand, Red Bull has two teams. Red Bull has their their main Red Bull team. Then they also own a secondary team it's kind of their junior team, AlphaTauri. And last year, in the middle of the year, mid-season, Red Bull decided to demote Pierre Gasly from the main Red Bull team down to AlphaTauri. And, they were called Toro Rosso previously. So he was publicly embarrassed and publicly shamed by Red Bull. And on Sunday, what's so cool is that Pierre Gasly beat the main Red Bull car, and he beat Alex Albon, the guy who replaced him. How cool is that? It's so good for Pierre Gasly. I just look at that and go, man, they can suck it. Suck it, Red Bull. I was so happy for him, because if you've ever had a crazy vindicating moment, I've had that before. It feels so good to win and look at the other side and go, "What's up? I'm here." That's the coolest moment. Now, two things are really funny in all this to me. Number one is that last year, everybody was criticizing Pierre Gasly, saying that he couldn't handle the pressure. And I actually tend to agree. I think last year, we saw pretty clearly Pierre Gasly couldn't handle the pressure of the position he was in, behind Max Verstappen, needing to do really well and elevate that Red Bull team. But on Sunday, that final lap, Carlos Sainz was right on his tail. And if Pierre Gasly makes any mistake in that final lap, Carlos Sainz makes a move and wins that race. Pierre Gasly, however, handled that pressure, that moment, incredibly well. Carlos Sainz right on his tail. He's got to be perfect. A lot of pressure in that moment. And what did Pierre Gasly do? He brought it home. He was perfect. I find that so cool. I think the last 2 years, the struggle that Pierre Gasly's been through, all that stuff has made him better. It's made him stronger. And that's one of the things I really, really love about sports, is that, Pierre Gasly's become incredibly resilient. And it wasn't that he wouldn't have won, but I think that, man, all this stuff going on has made him a better driver and made him a better person, and it's so cool to me. If he wasn't incredibly resilient, here's what I was trying to say, I guess, is if Pierre Gasly wasn't incredibly resilient, we wouldn't have seen him win on Sunday. The fact that he's been through all this stuff, the fact that he can now handle the pressure, iron sharpens iron. He's been molded by the pain and the struggle he's been through. That, to me, that's the human story. I love that. Now, the second thing that I find really funny is that one of Red Bull's biggest problems right now is that their number 2 driver, Alex Albon, simply isn't performing well enough. And the fact that he's actually getting outperformed by Pierre Gasly, not just this race, but multiple races previously, the guy he replaced, that's a big statement. That's a big storyline. This is also very important, though. I want to say this because you use hindsight 2020 is a thing people say all the time. What that means is, and now that I know 2020 is kind of a crappy year, maybe we should change that to hindsight 2015 or something. I have no idea. That's a joke, a bad joke. The reality to me is that if Red Bull had not demoted Pierre Gasly, maybe he'd be awesome. Maybe if he'd stayed at Red Bull, that main team all year, maybe he would be incredible this year. But I think the truth is that the struggle he went through, getting demoted by Red Bull, being publicly embarrassed, all that stuff he went through, that setback was what he needed, I think, to gain a bit of an edge mentally and emotionally, where, weirdly enough, the pain he went through of getting demoted actually made him even better. 2 weeks ago, Pierre Gasly got Driver of the Week. This week he wins. And I'm so happy for him. But I just want to say, I think he needed to get demoted. I think he wouldn't be the racer he is today if he hadn't been demoted last year, which is a weird roundabout way of saying, I think you can't say, well, they should have never demoted him. Because if they hadn't demoted him, he wouldn't be doing as well as he is now. The final thing I want to say about this weekend, it was such a great time. This really stood out to me this past weekend as I was watching F1. I love the Formula One music. I can't be the only person out there. I can't be the only person to say this, man. You have the drums dicka dicka da dicka da 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 dicka da 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 da. Okay, first of all, I can't believe I just did that. That wasn't planned to go into this weird long. Is it cringy? I'm going to leave it in. I don't care. It's fun. But I can't believe I did that. But you know that when you hear that music, you're like, da, 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 da. For me, that moment watching Formula One is just like the coolest. Oh my gosh, it's so much fun. I love it. Where I do it in the car. I can't be the only person who listens to the Formula One theme music in the car. You go to YouTube, you type in F1 theme music. They got literally like the live orchestra. And it is dangerous. You put on that while you're driving your car. If you wear like gloves, it's even cooler. Oh my God. Again, dangerous, but so much fun. I go way too fast and I have a great time doing it. I can't be alone. I can't be the only. Tell me I'm not the only person in the entire world who sometimes in my car turns on the F1 theme music and just has a good old zoom in time. I just, for me, that music, when I hear lights out and away we go, and then the F1 music kicks in, like, da, 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 da. Dude, it's the coolest. Like my skin, like my hair raises on my arms. I'm just like, what is it called? Goosebumps, I guess. I just get so excited. I love that moment. And to me, I love F1, man. F1, Formula One is such a cool sport that I know my Americans here. I live in America, obviously, and nobody here cares about it. And it's like they're missing so much. It's like, guys, get up at 6 a.m, watch the race, pay attention. F1, such a cool sport. So many good things going for them. And it's only going to get better as years go on and as F1 makes slight little changes like a budget cap and all this stuff. I just am so in love with Formula One. I love where they're headed. And it's just a sport I'm so into. And I'm just a fan. And it's just fun to be a fan of a sport and enjoy watching it week to week.